The next step is to put our reset spring on here. I'm going to get a little bit of CLP on my fingers. Don't worry, I'm going to use degreaser on my hands. And this is where the rubber band comes in handy. So I sat here and fiddled with this a while, and it says to push this in here, this trigger reset spring in here. And you basically have to push it in there just like that. Just like it's sitting in there now. And the tail end of that spring has to go on the very end of the trigger. There's a step on the back of the trigger. So that was kind of complicated for me. It just said push it in there. I had the bright idea, since this hole goes all the way through, I took a rubber band, and this isn't really the best rubber band for it because it's so dang thick. But I took the rubber band and the 550 cords here in case I break the rubber band, and I feed it through just like that. So I have it just going right through it, just like that. I'm going to take the rubber band, and it might be online or something like that, but this was just me messing around down here in the basement. And I'm going to feed that rubber band through that rear hole. And I'm going to try to keep it standing up straight. So that way, you can see that I start pulling that rubber band, and it's going to pull. It's also going to compress that spring. So I'm going to help it over top of the first couple parts of the sear. So it goes over top of the sear. And I think, yep, I popped it too far. So I didn't come across this. As you can see, see how the spring came out the back? That wasn't supposed to happen. So I'm going to push the spring back in there. There it goes. All right, so I'm back in business. So the way I can tell that that's back into place is when I pull the trigger, it clicks back forward. So that's resetting my trigger. In order to get my rubber band out, I could cut it, or I could just pull one end of it. It seemed to work last time, so that's why I say this rubber band probably wasn't the best for it. But there we go. Rubber band's out. My spring is in there. Just going to center it a little bit. Perfect. My safety still works, and we're good. Next step, we're going to put our hammer in there. And remember, we had a little bit of spring tension on our hammer. It doesn't really say which side to put it into. In the picture, it's showing the right-hand side of the frame, and it's showing the insert, the pin, through the right side. So logic is going to tell me that I'm just going to go from right to left. The other thing to note on it is, if you look, the right-hand side of the trigger frame there is wider than the left-hand side. It'll work on the left-hand side. I know that because that's where mine was. But I'm going to say to not put it in that side because the picture shows not to. I put too much on this. I'm just putting a little bit of CLP on it just to keep it lubricated and rust free. I don't want to put too much on there. I was scraping rust and crud from there, and it wasn't cosmeline either. It was just someone firing it and leaving it. So got a little bit of lubrication on there. Nothing crazy. Here's another trick for you guys. So this is a pretty big pin, so I'm going to use my biggest punch. My pin's going to go right to left, so I'm going to put the punch in left to right. I have more leverage with the pin, or with my punch. So I'm going to push my punch through as just a kind of a slave pin. There. So it's slave pin in. That was pretty easy. And all I'm going to do is, as I push the punch out, I'm going to push the pin in. When you get to certain parts like that, it's going to pop out, but you'll still have that to be able to leverage it around, and then you should be able to just punch it right in there. You can check this to see if it works now by So the spring would be pushing forward on it. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of forward pressure, pull the trigger, it would fire, it come back. You can hear the spring, or the sear latched it. If I pull up on it, yep, it's still good. And then you let go, and that's your trigger reset. So whenever you let go of your trigger, it clicks. We're good. And the last step in reinstalling everything into the trigger guard, or into the trigger assembly, is going to be to compress this hammer spring with the plunger in it. Now we took it off from right to left because that was the shortest distance for that side, but I found it easier to go in from left to right because we have this cutaway, and that's actually going to help us out. This part really sucks because if I let it go, it's going to go flying that way and probably into my sump pump. So after trying a bunch, I can't compress that stupid spring at all. So I'm just going to put the original one back in. It is shorter, so what I'm thinking is that one's probably cut a little bit different. But all I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to line this up. I'm going to take my punch. I'm going to try to keep it in a linear action here. Draw it back, compress it, and just kind of flop it on over. Just like that. And now I can test it. So my safety is on. I can cock it. Nothing should happen. Okay, take my safety off, pull my trigger, my bolt goes forward, comes back, resets. Yep, and I got a good trigger reset. So what I'll do is I'll take this, get my action back down here. Let's put my slide back on. And once again, here's the comparison between the recoil spring. So let's put the new one on. New recoil spring on there. Let's take our slide. And once again, it's going to be a rocking / twisting motion on this. So kind of have to finesse it in there, just like that. All right. Take my recoil spring and my guide, feed them both in there. Oh yeah, big difference there. All right. Grab my trigger assembly. We'll install back into the keyway here. And then we'll install our pin from right to left. All right. Get my stock down here. Make sure I catch the latch. And eventually I'll read the manual to go further into how to date everything. But I'm going to catch my lip right here on my action. I'm going to depress my spring. I'm going to tighten my bayonet lug and barrel band here. Just snug. All right. Let's bring this back up here. It's the nice thing about this sling is it's just got this real quick snap like that. So if we go back onto my action here, I'll pull it back, I'll let it forward. My safety is engaged right now, so I shouldn't have anything happen. Pull the trigger, nothing happens. I'm gonna really wrench on it to see if it'll go off. Yeah, nope. My safety is still good. Take my safety off. I will pull the trigger. That's good. We got a good hammer. I'm going to hold the trigger back, and this is what they talk about for reset. So I'm going to pull my slide back, and then I'm going to let it go forward. I'm not going to let it go, but I'll assist it forward. Now I'm going to let go of my trigger. Now I should have a click sound, and that would be my sear disengaging. So let's listen for it. Yep, that was my sear. I should be able to pull the trigger again. Yep, pull the bolt back. If that sear was messed up, then it would basically be a full auto gun. So that's why it's important to check to see if you have it reinstalled the correct way by pressing in and then listening for that click to get that reset. That way your hammer's not following your bolt forward. Everything looks to be good. I put my safety back on and try that again. Yep, nothing happened. We're good. So that was just, I would say quick, but we all know that it wasn't quick. That was the Wolf spring repair kit. My suggestion would be, yeah, it's a good kit. The only problems with it was there was no labeling on anything. There was no parts list on anything. My trigger spring was too strong. Like, this thing it's strong. The trigger spring, or the hammer spring, this was the hammer spring. The hammer spring is way too strong. The trigger spring is shorter in the new one, but it works just fine. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I haven't tested the ejector spring or the extractor spring, so it could be hit or miss with those two. But everything else seemed good. It's a good kit. I paid $13 for it, so I'm not upset at all. It basically did what I wanted it to do, and I think it's a good buy. If you got a rifle sitting around that you want to use more and you want it to last, then by all means get this kit, try it out. I can't wait to try it out at the range.